Hi, welcome back to the workshop for the 16th and final episode in the Micawber Telecaster build. Everything's ready to go now, it's just a case of assembly, setup and then a sound demo at the end, so make sure you stick around for that. Okay, so it's time to get this thing together. I've got my soldering iron out, but I'm not going to do any wiring yet. The first thing I'm going to do is to get these string ferrules put in place. Now, the problem you sometimes see with these is that they're quite a tight fit, and we've put quite a lot of lacquer around these holes, so the holes are smaller than when we initially fitted these. So before I put them in place, I'm just going to put the soldering iron on them for a few seconds, and what that does is it just heats the metal up, and that will soften the lacquer, so when we push them in, it doesn't chip. These are actually not too bad. I didn't put a huge amount of lacquer onto this body, but sometimes when you put loads on, it really can become a problem to get them in. And I'm just pushing them in with a straight punch that fits into the ferrule. Okay, so they've gone in lovely, which is brilliant. I think next up, stick the strap buttons on. And I'm doing this quite early, simply because it gives me somewhere to rest the guitar when I'm working on it, without it resting on the paint. Okay, so next up I'm going to put the scratch plate and the bridge in position with the pickups attached and run the wiring through to the cavity. I'm going to hold them in place just temporarily with a couple of screws until I've got the wiring done, and then we can line everything up properly once the neck's in position. Okay, so with that done, now time to get the wiring sorted out. Now, as I said in the earlier video, the wiring on these isn't too complicated. So the live from the neck pickup goes to this lug, the live from the bridge pickup goes to this lug, and the two grounds are going to get grounded onto this pot here. So I'm going to start with the bridge pickup, purely because the kind of wires are already the length I want them. I'm just going to tin this connection. Solder that on. So I've got three separate ground wires here. So just to make things easier, I'm just going to tin them into one connection. And get some heat onto this pot. And that's the wiring done. Very straightforward. So I'm going to pass the output jack through the hole in the body and get this all into position. And I'm just going to very loosely screw that in place, just to stop it flapping about if I need to tip the body over. And from there we can fit the jack socket. Okay, so that's the body done with for a little while. So now we can move on with the neck again. This is all ready to go, all beautifully polished up. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some tuners onto the job. So that's the body and the neck assembled. We just need to join them together now. And that is a lovely tight fit. You see there, I'm picking it up by the neck without any screws in place. I think that's the sign of a well-fitting neck pocket. Again, these screws have all got a liberal coating of wax on them just to help them go in. Okay, that's the first look at it, kind of in one piece. Okay, so this is pretty much ready now for kind of putting all the screws in and getting some strings onto it. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that everything's working okay, so that I'm not having to take stuff completely apart should there be a problem. So to do that, I'm going to do what I refer to as a tap test on it, and that involves plugging it in to an amplifier, and I just need to take a bit of metal, screwdriver or something, and just tap on the pole pieces. Okay, so that's working. Tone obviously affects it, and the volume works. So I'm pretty confident that I haven't got any electrical issues now, and everything should, in theory, work as it should. So now I can just go about getting the rest of the hardware put in place in a more permanent fashion. Okay, and now we're at that stage. It's the ultimate new guitar moment. It's something I've been wanting to do for ages. Get this horrible plastic off. Ooh, beautiful. That really does look great, I think. Now hopefully all of this is going to kind of age into a more subtle finish, but I think for an out of the box look, that is gorgeous. Okay, so with that done, really is time to get some strings onto this thing and to start sorting out the nut. Now, I asked the customer 100 questions about how he wants this guitar building. Didn't actually get round to asking him what strings he wanted on it. Now from my perspective, there's only one answer to that, and that's Ernie Ball Hybrid Slinky's 9 to 46, and that's what I've got in stock, so that's what he's having. If that's a choice he doesn't like, we can always change that another day, but I think it's a good starting point for a setup on this. Okay, so it's time to get this nut sorted out. I'm not going to go into massive detail because it's something I've covered a couple of times already, but I will film it just so you can see what my process is. Okay, so very quickly what I've done there is I've put a rule across the first and second fret, and I've just measured with a feeler gauge, and in this case that's 32 thou. So then what I've done is I've taken, for the first string, I've put another 10 thou feeler gauge against that, put that up against the knot and use the appropriate sized nut file to file down just until I start to touch those feeler gauges, and then I know I'm up to the correct position with that slot. Then I'll change the 10th thou for a 12th thou and add that to the stack and do that for the next string. And I just add 2 thou to each string until I've cut all the slots. And I'm not saying it's totally foolproof, but since I've been doing it this way, I've never had any problem dialing my nut in as it should be. And this has now got like a really nice playable nut action. Okay, so with that done, what I'm now going to do is just slide the nut until it's in the right position for playing. And I'm just going to mark at the sides of the fretboard. Then we need to take this out and trim it down to those marks. Also, these nut slots are way too deep. So what I'll do is I will now take some meat off the top of the nut until I've got probably half of each of the strings sat in the nut slot. I want to have as little friction running through here as is humanly possible. Okay, so that's all filed down to size now. It fits at the side of the neck. Absolutely spot on. There's no projection from one side or the other, which is great. So now it's just a case of taking it out one last time and giving it a good clean up with some various grades of sandpaper. Okay, so time to get this finished off and stick the nut in. I've sanded that down to kind of 1200 grit and kind of polished it up with a Dremel, so it's nice and smooth and shiny now, and it's not going to kind of, you're not going to feel that when you're playing the guitar, and that's really what you're shooting for. I've just got the strings right out of the way. Now some people say you should stick these in with wood glue. I'm not saying that's wrong. I prefer a bit of super glue, but you need just the smallest bit. And as you can probably see there, there's hardly any glue at all in there, just the tiniest little drop. And I've never had any problems getting a nut back out again that I've stuck in this way. Okay, that's in. We're ready to tune it back up to pitch. Okay, so there's only one last job to do now, and that's just to put this string tree in position. Now this needs to sit on the E and B strings, and I always position them just a little bit forward of the G tuner. So I'm simply going to use my awl just to put a little mark in there. And I'm just going to drill a little 2mm hole there. Put a little flag onto the drill bit because it would be horrible to drill a hole straight through the headstock at this stage. But I think it's important to leave this job until now, just so you make sure you're getting it in exactly the right position, so you're not introducing any unnecessary friction into the setup. I'm simply just going to screw that down. Okay, so let's finish off getting this set up, and I'm going to do 3 things. Firstly, I'm going to check the action, make sure that's okay. I need to make sure the intonation's right, and I'm going to make sure that the neck relief is roughly where we need it. But for now, I'm going to start with the action, and I'm going to set this up to have an action at the 12th fret of around about 1.6mm. That's for the high E string, and we're about there. If anything, we're a little bit lower, and I can live with that. And for the low E string, about 2mm, and we're just slightly high there. So I'm just going to drop that down a little bit. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to just drop that down half a turn on each of the screws. Just bring that back to pitch and recheck it. And we're still a touch high, so we'll go another half a turn. And that's pretty much spot on. So I've got both these strings where I need them. So next up, I'm just going to put a radius gauge underneath and just see where we are. And that's spot on. So that's the action, pretty much where we need it to be. So that's the action sorted. So from there we can check the neck relief. And all I'm going to do is put a capo on the first fret, put it in the playing position, and I'm going to fret at the 19th. And I'm just going to check the neck relief at the 7th fret. Now I've got a 12 thou feeler gauge here, but I'm looking for plus or minus 2 thou, I'd say, on here. And I'd say we're just about there. It's a little bit lower, it's probably about 10 thou, but if it's not causing any problems, I'm happy to live with that. So all that leaves now is the intonation. So I'll just bring everything back up to pitch. Okay, and then I'm going to check the harmonic and then the fretted note at the 12th fret. That string's spot on. Now that's just a touch sharp. And if it's sharp, you make the string longer. Perfect. There it is, that's the intonation done. Good thing about these 6 saddle bridges, they do really make that job a lot easier, or depending on your point of view, possible. Now I'm just going to check the action again to make sure that that hasn't affected anything. And we're all good. Okay, so that only leaves one job now, and that is to just trim off the end of these strings. And there it is, done. Well, this has been something of a journey, and it's taken me a little bit longer to make this one than I thought it might. But I have to say the extra time was well worth it, and I'm really, really happy with the results. And I think most of you are going to be very interested to hear what this one sounds like. Now, I'm not going to do the demo myself. I've actually got the new owner to come in and do that for me.
Hi, I'm Isaac from Reflector, and I'm picking up my new guitar off Patrick, which I'm absolutely buzzing about. Yeah, I should probably show you how it sounds. so good. It's amazing, Patrick. Thanks very much.
Not a problem, mate. Not a problem.
Absolute dream.
Well, that's another project done. I hope it's been enjoyable and informative. If so, don't forget to leave me a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.